week we were talking about appreciation, specifically your book, Focus on the Good Stuff. We talked about the first lesson of being grateful and the power of positive thinking. Truly tremendous stuff that you bring out. Wouldn't you say, though, this is obvious stuff?
It is. You're right. I mean, I don't sort of pretend to have invented something new here. I mean, as confident and sort of proud of my work and my book as I am, I'm not so arrogant to believe that, you know, I came up with some of this. But I think at the same time, while you and I and many people listening, watching may understand these concepts, the bigger challenge is, do we actually implement them, use them in our lives? I think collectively, in our awareness right now as a culture, we're starting to understand this more and more. Kids are starting to learn this. It's coming out in more regular, everyday conversation. And did you ever take a class on positive thinking or on how to appreciate yourself or other people?
No.
I never did either.
No.
Right? I mean, these aren't the kind of things we learn in school, per se. I'm hoping as education evolves, kids will start to learn these things, right? But so for a lot of us who are adults and off doing our lives, we've got to figure out ways we can actually put this stuff into our lives. So I wrote Focus on the Good Stuff really to be like a workbook. And I know you said this last week, and I really appreciate saying it, because these types of books are not to be just put on the shelf. They're to be used and reused and underlined and practiced. You know, whether you read through the whole thing or not, it's take what you learn and actually use it. It's just like every time I go speak or lead a seminar, you know, within a corporation or with any group of people, I always say at the very end, look, the real work of this starts when you leave. I hope you got inspired, I hope you laughed, I hope you had a good time, I hope you had some good thoughts, but unless you put it into action, it doesn't make any difference.
That power of appreciation you bring up last week was really hit home when you mentioned the part about your wife saying to you 7 years ago before you got married, she appreciated flowers. She liked them. Spontaneous giving of flowers. You gave them, she reacted positively, and you've done it for 7 years. And then here I see in lesson 3 you're saying use positive words, and it's about communication. It's funny, listeners, because what Mike says about the lack of classes in our educational society, it's true. A lot of times we're told, don't do this, don't do that. We're not told what to do. And then the communication side, using positive words is all well and good, but if you don't see the recipient of the words and really hear them, remember, 2 ears and 1 mouth, but if you don't, communication's a two-way street. I think that's where the power comes in, is using the positive words and hearing and seeing how that other person reacts.
Absolutely. And this, you know, I talked about my wife Michelle last week, and one of the things Michelle's taught me a lot about appreciation, about communication in our relationship, in our marriage, and something else that she's really good at that relates to using positive words as well as this two-way communication is that and again, one of the things she did when we first started dating is instead of getting mad at me or frustrated with me when I wouldn't acknowledge or appreciate something that she did, she'd raise her hand and say, "I'd like to be acknowledged," right? And I would always stop and go, What do you mean? And then she'd tell me, she'd say, "I just did this thing, or I spent a lot of time on this, and I would like to be acknowledged for that." And at first, I was even a little put off, like she's just asking, you know, it's just, people don't normally do that, right? But what I appreciated about it is instead of her getting irritated with me, she was just saying what she needed. And what she did in the process was that she trained me about what was important to her, how to acknowledge her, when to acknowledge her, because it is a personal thing. See, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So what's happened now is 7 years later, obviously, we've been married for a few years, we've been in this relationship, I know a lot more about what's important when she wants to be appreciated. And I also know that whenever she's not happy with me, or if she seems a little, I will say to her very proactively, I'll just say, "Hey babe, is there something that I missed or didn't notice or should have appreciated?" And often she'll say, "Yes," and then she'll tell me what that is, right? And again, even though this is with my wife, this works whether it's a business relationship, a friendship, or a love relationship, because it is two ways. It's not just, if we wait around all the time for everyone to notice the things that we're doing, tell us in exactly the right way, we're often going to be disappointed, because as caring and loving and aware as all of us are, the reality is we're all busy and we're often self-focused. So if you and I are friends, I'm not always going to be able to read your mind, but if you tell me, "Hey Mike, this is important to me," or "Hey, you know what, this thing happened," you know, so it's really about, but it's using those positive words, talking about what you want, instead of always getting mad about what you're not getting or what you don't have.
And sometimes I think you catch the other person off guard when you use those positive words and say, "This is what I want." Again, they may be self-focused, or what is obvious to you was not obvious to them. I had a phone call a couple of weeks ago, now that it's been, and the person was saying, "Well, look, this is what you can do for me, Timothy. This is what you can do for me. This is what you can do for me." And by the third time I had to say, "Well, Robert, that's all well and good, and I'm happy to do that for you. By the by, this is how you can help me." And there was dead silence on the other end of the line, because Robert had never actually considered this. But I put it out there in the open saying, "Look, I'm willing to work with you, but work is truly a two-way street. I'll help you willingly, gladly, but why don't you come over and see my side? And then if we can work together, we'll move forward from there.
Yeah.
I really got to say, that was very powerful, though, using the positive words.
Yep.
You really start to believe the words. I think you say it well in your book. The more you repeat it, the more you internalize it.
Absolutely. And the thing that I also believe very strongly, Timothy, is our words don't just describe things, they create things.
Yes.
So if we can really realize that by what we say, it actually creates things in the world. Because look, that's what goals are. What's a goal? A goal is just, I want to do this, you speak it out loud. You don't know if you're going to make it happen or not. But when I coach people, if they're not willing to articulate what their goals are, I'll tell them, look, you might make it happen, but the chances are a lot less than if you're willing to sort of put your money where your mouth is, say it out loud, tell everybody what you want, and then go do it.
Well, I was listening to a financial advisor in late September who talked about his goals. He's taken it so far, listeners, as to laminate them and put them in his shower. Nice. So that's what he sees every morning. In addition to the shampoo and the soap, he sees his goals. But he also has them in his bedroom. He has them everywhere. And every goal he's ever written since 1983, he has them. And the killer part is he sees the cross line through them. So he knows he's achieved them. And again, that's positive reinforcement for him.
Yeah. And the thing about goals, too, is people got to remember, you got to write your goals and speak them in positive language.
Yes.
So a lot of times, if I'm working with somebody and they're going to go do something, they're going to go have an important meeting, I say, how do you want it to go? Well, I don't want to screw up. Well, I hope I don't, and it makes sense. I mean, that's the real human part of it. Like, I hope I don't say something stupid. I hope I don't blow the deal. Well, okay, if you flip that over, though, that's what you don't want to happen. What do you want to happen? And start to see that, speak that, visualize that. I mean, that's really how we can manifest and create any of our goals to happen.
Well, I have to agree with Mike. And lesson 4 in his book, again, this is Focus on the Good Stuff. Please pick up a copy. This book is truly amazing. Lesson 4, Mike, I had a momentary pause when I read Acknowledge Others. I actually take it, listeners, to another step. I say appreciate others. Mm-hmm. The reason I appreciate the people around me is I really do enjoy being with them. The corollary is really quite simple. If you don't appreciate the people you're around with, then please, for God's sake, listeners, bail out. I can tell you, there was a group, I've had a lot of respect for this group and the leader who was in the group, but we had quite a severe disagreement, and I noticed the negative energy that I was picking up from that relationship. The answer was quite simple. I bailed out of that relationship. I'm glad I did. Why don't you tell our listeners, though, Mike, what you mean by acknowledge others, and why not even say it as appreciate others?
Well, I think in this case I agree with you, and you can sort of use the words interchangeably.
Uh-huh.
The concept of acknowledgement, as I talk about it, really has to do with letting people know what you appreciate about them. So it's the act of appreciation.
Gotcha.
But, it's because I could appreciate you in my mind and then not say anything. So my challenge with the word acknowledgement is to actually take that action. So to let you know, to write a card, to speak it out loud. And a lot of it, as we've been talking about both last week and this week, is being real specific about it. I mean, the 3 components of acknowledging people effectively are, it's got to be genuine, it's got to be specific, and it's got to be personal.
Yes.
So, if you do that, because telling someone that they're smart or they're nice is fine. It's not bad. It's better to do that than nothing at all, but that's a very general, sort of generic, it's a positive judgment, essentially. But if you get real specific, if I say to you, Timothy, when you made that comment in the meeting yesterday, all of a sudden I had a bunch of ideas, it gave me a whole bunch of new thoughts, and I really appreciate the way you think. Now that's very specific, and what I've also done is let you know the positive impact that you've had on me. And fundamentally, most of us, no matter how confident we are, that's the question we're asking all the time is, what value am I bringing? What positive impact, if any, am I having? And when we get insecure, we're not sure, and when someone can sort of break through our own insecurity and let us know, hey, this is what you did that really helped me in my life, you do it genuinely, man. That's one of the best gifts you can give anybody.
I'd have to agree with Mike. As we close out this segment, I'd like to tell you just a short story. Rose and I were in a series of meetings over the last year, and we made a point of starting each meeting with appreciation. And my God, what it did to the room, the positive energy it brought, but it was heartfelt, and it was very specific. We thanked people for what they had done, and we had people volunteering, I've got to say, Mike, to carry on the next week.
Nice.
I really appreciate you being on the show. Again, Mike Robbins, author of Focus on the Good Stuff. Check it out.